Happy New Year, boys and girls. The first ESPN FC Live of 2025. My first footers are Rob Dawson and Luis Miguel Echegaray. My name is Mark Donaldson. New Year resolution. Rob Dawson, what's yours?
Well, you usually do more exercise and go to the gym, but
yeah,
I'm going to something more interesting. I'm going to try and knock off more football league grounds in 2025.
How many are you at?
I'm on about 60 odd. So you need to work towards the 92, don't you? That's the benchmark in England, isn't it? In the 92.
And it keeps changing. Yeah, the problem is the promotion relegation keeps changing, and
does.
And that's good. So you've got about 30 odd to go. LME, Happy New Year to you. What's your New Year resolution?
Happy New Year, MD. Happy New Year, Rob Dawson. Drink more water. My wife got me this massive water tank thing. So I'm just drinking, I'm hydrating like crazy. I said, Jen, my wife, Jen, I want to drink more water. And she really took it to full levels by giving me this massive tank thing. So that's my resolution.
Okay. Yeah. Mine is to increase my my number of states traveled in the United States. I'm on 30. Right now, so I've got 20 to go. So hopefully the travels this season can do that. Mohamed Salah's New Year resolution. He's been giving interviews to kind of rights holders, TV rights holders, and he gave an interview to Sky Sports. His New Year resolution is to try and win the Premier League. But some interesting quotes, Rob, came about from this interview. And he was basically asked about what's going to happen after the summer in 2025. And there you go. He says he's into his last 6 months. There's no progress there. We just need to wait and see. And he also said, it's my last year for the club, so I want to do something special for the city. Is this just posturing with someone who will probably sign a new deal with Liverpool, or you want to read more into it than that?
Yeah, I mean, I think his public comments are probably all part of the dance in these situations. You know, there is a bit of kind of posturing with these situations. I don't think that it's a sure thing that he will sign a new contract. I think if you look at the three of them that Liverpool have got, you've got Trent, who looks halfway out the door to Real Madrid. You've got Virgil van Dijk, who looks as if that he is ready to stay and commit to a new contract. I would suggest that Mo Salah, out of the three of them, is somewhere in the middle. I don't think that it's a foregone conclusion that he will stay. I also don't think that it's done that this is his last year. I think in terms of those comments that he's made there, you know, the bare facts are that unless there's a contract that is signed before June, that this is going to be his last year. He hasn't got a contract beyond this season. That he is into the last 6 months of his deal. So in terms of, you know, pure fact, he is correct. But I think when he gives these interviews, and he has given a lot more interviews in the last sort of 2 or 3 months than he has done throughout his time at Liverpool. He's notoriously, you know, avoided interviews throughout his time at Liverpool, and now suddenly he wants to talk a little bit more. It's all part of the dance. It's a little bit more pressure on Liverpool to give him what he wants, which is fair enough. You know, this is part of the game, that he wants a deal that he deems acceptable for himself, and this is part of the way that you get that.
LME, do you think what he wants may change? As Rob's just said, he's got his demands, but the more successful he is, because this is just one of the seasons of his life, he's played as well as this before, but with success can come, not greed, but kind of, hold on, I was asking for that, but that was before that, now I've done this, so maybe I want more. Or do you think it's not so much the amount here we're talking, it's probably the length of contract?
Yeah, it's a good question, just because obviously we're talking about a Mohamed Salah who's not 25 or 26. He knows that the end of his career is closer than obviously any other time. Time waits for no man, and neither does for the Egyptian star. But listen, I think here's the thing, and I think Rob Dawson said it perfectly, that this is a dance. It's a strategy, and he knows exactly what he wants. And, you know, whether we were talking about any other player, there would obviously be some things like, are these things getting in the way of his productivity, etc.? And when it comes to Mohamed Salah, that's clearly not the case. We're talking, in my opinion, right now about the best player in Europe, not just the Premier League. He is delivering every single way. He gives you everything on the pitch, whether it's Jurgen Klopp and now it's Arne Slot, 30 goal contributions. And I think that these interviews and the things that he is saying is, just like Rob said, it's part of the dance and it's part of the strategy. And yeah, I think to your point, as he continues to deliver, he's saying to himself, I love Liverpool Football Club. This is where my family are. Everybody's happy. My kids are happy. But at the same time, I'm somebody that has given everything for Liverpool. I want to see your hand now, Liverpool Football Club. And if I'm going to be asked the question, he said it. As of right now, this is my last year at the club. He didn't say, I'm gone, this is over. He said, as of right now, because reportedly, both sides are not coming to an agreement. Yes, could it be a hindrance towards the Premier League title race? But not so much from what I'm seeing on the pitch right now, because every time you see Salah play, he gives it everything and then some. So he's well within his rights to say what he wants. I'm with Rob as well to say that I'm not so. I mean, I think he's going to stay, but I'm not 100% certain of that. And I think that the more these chats and these interviews continue, the more I think that Salah is the one that's winning and not Liverpool.
So producer Sam and the ESPN FC team behind the scenes could easily have just put January transfer window opens on the graphic at the bottom of your screen right now. But they put an exclamation mark after opens. So that means something big has to happen. Doesn't look like it's going to be Trent Alexander-Arnold leaving midway through the season to go to Real Madrid, Rob Dawson. So if the Mohamed Salah saga is a dance, what's the Trent Alexander-Arnold saga called, and what's the outcome here?
I mean, that looks like the last throes of his Liverpool career to me, to be honest. I said there that there are three of them, three big Liverpool players who are all in these contract situations. If Mo Salah is somewhere in the middle, Van Dijk looks like he's going to stay. I would suggest that the other end of the scale is Trent Alexander-Arnold, and he looks halfway out the door to Real Madrid.
The last dance, then. How about
the
that?
last dance? There you go.
It's not being used by
very
ESPN
good,
for anything, I don't think.
I think the copyright guys might be onto you. I think Real Madrid are not in the business of making approaches for players who they don't know want to join them. The very fact that they have made any kind of contact at all with Liverpool about the possibility of a January deal suggests to me that they know full well, A, that at the very worst, Trent is going to go in the summer, and that best case scenario for them, that they may even be able to tempt him in January. Now, again, Liverpool are well within their rights to rebuff that approach. They have got a Premier League title to win. They're also well placed in the Champions League, so they have got their eye on what they can achieve with Trent in their team this season. I think that the difficulty maybe for Liverpool is if Real Madrid were to come back with a significant offer for a player who you believe is going to go on a free transfer anyway, then that may change your stance, because as of right now, it looks to everyone like Trent is going to leave Liverpool on a free transfer. Liverpool aren't going to get any kind of transfer fee for him. So if Real Madrid were to go back to them and say, look, we'll give you 10, 15, 20 million to take him now, I think that gives Liverpool a decision to make, because financially they are well placed, but they are not a financial behemoth in the way that Man City are, and they do need money incoming to replace Trent when the time comes that he does go. So I don't expect him to I think that probably he will be a Liverpool player beyond this transfer window, but I do think that if Real Madrid were to come back with a significant offer, that Liverpool would have to look at that seriously.
Oh, MD's mic is gone, I believe.
You're going to have to host, LME.
Yeah, I know. It's going to have to be me, unless MD likes to mime it up. This is part of his resolution, to get some new mechanisms. Well, let me take over as his sound comes up. And let me just chime in on this Trent Alexander situation right now, because I'm sure MD was going to ask me about that, specifically on Trent Alexander-Arnold. When Real Madrid wants somebody, you have to remember that when it comes to transfers and who they want, it's the club playing chess and everybody else playing checkers. That, to me, is just the key thing. We have seen it historically. Jude Bellingham's arrival didn't just happen, Rob Dawson. It was a process of influence, right? They planted the impact 12, 15 months before he even arrived to Real Madrid. They went to his house. They promised him what he wanted, never manipulated anything. They just planted the seed for Jude Bellingham to come. The same thing with Mbappe. They were patient with him, but they knew the personal interest, and boom, they got him. Historically speaking as well, Luis Figo, David Beckham, and Liverpool, of course, know too well with Michael Owen and Steve McManaman. So there's always a strategy and a process with Real Madrid. And as you said, Rob, like, they don't just do this, nonchalantly without really thinking about it. When they want somebody, they put all their efforts and they create a process. And I believe that's exactly what they have done when they initially just created that offer. It was to really just plant the seed. That's exactly what they're doing with Trent Alexander-Arnold, because they know that Trent Alexander-Arnold's team is interested. They know that TAA is interested, and they know that, he has massive ambitions. He's actually also really good friends with Jude Bellingham as well. So I have no doubt that they have conversations at some point saying, Madrid's great, come to the Spanish capital. And he's a young man. And even though he has only worn Liverpool colors, Rob, to me, this is somebody as well that's going to leave. And I think it was a lose-lose situation for Liverpool, because to your point, if they accept something now at a low fee, it's never going to justify what they could have gotten for Trent Alexander-Arnold. And then they would lose somebody in the objective of trying to win the title. So that's a lose. And if they let him go at the end of this season, they don't receive a single penny. So that's a loss already as well. So really, this is Trent Alexander-Arnold winning and Real Madrid winning, because even without Trent Alexander-Arnold, they don't need him this season. They're just thinking about, the Florentino Perez of resuscitating the Galacticos era. I think as well, Trent Alexander-Arnold is going. So, all right. So let's do this, Rob. As we wait for Mark Donaldson, who's probably gone to Best Buy and trying to get a new mic. Liverpool speaking. Virgil van Dijk, let's say for the sake of it. Are you back, my friend?
I don't know. It's not I can't hear him. I'll put you through here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
There you go. It's quality now over quantity. So apologies for the next.
As long as you're here, Mark Donaldson, that's all we care about.
2025, magnificent. I caught a bit of that. What I was actually going to ask was do Liverpool have sufficient cover for Trent in Connor Bradley, who's outstanding? And could Trent be the difference between Real Madrid winning and losing a very tight title race? So you can both have that, because I don't know who said what.
Well, I think that's the most interesting part of this Trent situation, in that all three of those players, Van Dijk, Salah and Trent, are all important players for Liverpool. Trent is obviously the youngest of those, and is also the only homegrown Liverpool player. That kind of elevates his status. But I would suggest, and maybe LME can chime in after I'm done, that Trent Alexander-Arnold as a right back is the easiest one of those three to replace, and also the cheapest. You've mentioned there that they've already got Connor Bradley, who has come through their academy and has done very, very well. You would probably need another right back to come in and compete with Connor to kind of push him to maybe the next level, or maybe to be able to take, because Bradley is still very young, to bring him in and then take him out and bring him in again. But when you're looking at those three players and you consider the amount of money that it would take to replace all of them, it would take immense funds to replace Virgil van Dijk and, again, Mo Salah. I know that there would be an emotional kind of thing that if Trent was to leave his boyhood club for Real Madrid, that would be a big thing for Liverpool fans. But in the cold light of day, when the money men are making their decisions, the bare facts are that Trent Alexander-Arnold, as good as a player he is cheaper to replace than either of those two, simply because he's a right back, and you've also got Connor Bradley there trying to compete. So it's difficult. I mean, it's the whole thing is difficult for Liverpool, because you can argue that maybe the club shouldn't have had the situation where three of their top players are all coming to the end of their deals in the same year, and I get that criticism. But if you're going to lose one of those players, even though Trent is the youngest, and even though that he's the guy, almost the face of Liverpool because he's a local boy who's come through the academy, I would suggest that it's easier for them to lose Trent than it is the other two. Because like you said there, Mark, the bottom line is that they don't really need to do very much to replace him, because you've got Connor Bradley waiting in the wings, who's done really, really well.
Yeah, and let's remember something here, and I agree with you. Let's remember something here as well. We're talking. Had this been a Jurgen Klopp team, I think it would have been harder for me to agree. But because it's Arne Slot and his system is a little bit different, and Liverpool play more from a collectively controlled situation where it's not to say that Trent Alexander-Arnold is not important. Of course he is. It's more to say that there are more tools in the bag for Arne Slot to get the objective done. Mohamed Salah is the most important player for Liverpool. After that, especially given the injuries at the back, Virgil van Dijk is the next one because they need more defensive might whenever you're trying to protect the game. Trent Alexander-Arnold is a unique right back. He is a wonderful talent. But Liverpool don't depend on him. They're just extremely much better with him. And when you get rid of that notion, then it's much easier to move on. So I'll finally just end up by saying that I do think, just like we started, Mohamed Salah stays, though I'm not fully secure. Virgil van Dijk fully stays. Trent Alexander-Arnold, because of the objectives and because of just the way Real Madrid play chess instead of checkers, he's going to the Spanish capital at the end of this season.
Okay, let's have a bit of fun here before we preview the big game of the weekend, Liverpool against Manchester United on Sunday. I'm going to give you 5 top clubs in the Premier League. And ideally, you can give me a player and identify a player rather than just a position that you think would benefit them between now and the end of the season. Arsenal, Rob Dawson, what do you reckon? What have you heard?
Well, I mean, the talk around Arsenal is that they need a centre-forward, a proven goal scorer. I think Mikel Arteta would maybe argue that in that they aren't a team that necessarily creates all of their chances for a centre-forward to score. They score more in a kind of a collective way with Odegaard and Saka and Martinelli. I mean, there is interest from Arsenal in Isak at Newcastle, but he is playing so well at the moment that the chances of getting him out of Newcastle in January are next to nothing. So it's all very well Arsenal admiring him, and he has got admirers at the Emirates. The chances of getting him in January are almost zero. I mean, the fee that is sort of being rumoured around clubs at the moment is about 150 million. And there is hardly any club on the planet that can do that in the summer, let alone in January. So if that is the fee that's being quoted to Arsenal, you can forget about that. I think a lot of fans, Arsenal fans, would love to see them bring in a centre forward in January just to give them maybe that tip them over the edge in that title race, maybe that one last piece of the puzzle that they need. Can I see it happening? Not really. I think that maybe there may be 1 or 2 kind of fringe players coming in, but it won't be that kind of statement centre-forward signing that some Arsenal fans want.
Oh, maybe they've got what they were looking for, and they had him all the time. They just didn't play him that often, and maybe Gabriel Jesus is someone whose form, having picked up of late, he could be the focal point for the Arsenal attack. Another player I heard linked, LME, was Evan Ferguson. Arsenal was the team that I heard him linked with. 20-year-old, I think, good player. But Rob was talking before we came on air potentially about Man United as well. So we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. We can talk about Arsenal and whether Evan Ferguson would be a good fit for the Gunners. And also, it's different for Man United because they've kind of got a project player in Rasmus Højlund. Do they need another one like Evan Ferguson?
All right, let's focus on Evan Ferguson. I think the arrival of Diego Gomez from Inter Miami is probably making Brighton a very smart team in the transfer window to maybe play around. And Evan Ferguson fits that kind of player that could maybe be on the out. A very talented player, not getting as many minutes as he wishes. But as to your point, there's clubs that could be interested. I hear as well that Tottenham might be somebody that could be reportedly interested in somebody like Evan Ferguson. Specifically on Arsenal, they need a striker. We've talked about this day in and day out. And even though like players like Alexander Isak is not the right target, it's not going to be the player that's going to come, because I agree with Rob. There's no chance that somebody like Isak is going to leave Newcastle, let alone in January. But there are strikers. I mean, there's Omar Marmoush, the Egyptian star, who's got 18 goals, 12 assists for Frankfurt. I like Matteo Retegui a lot from Atalanta, 12 goals as well for the Italian club. How about, here we go, Ricardo Pepi, who's doing really well in the Eredivisie. Sometimes you don't think that just because you're not getting the star headline kind of grab a type of striker, like there's a lot of talent out there that can help. And if we're talking about Gabriel Jesus, that's back to his best. The strikers that I just mentioned kind of fit that sort of Mikel Arteta mold, mobile, selfless, looks to go wide as well. So there are, situations that can happen. Going back to Evan Ferguson and United, listen, I mean, I actually think that the problem for Man United is you are now under the strategy of Ruben Amorim, and you almost have to sell shop. Like every player will be available in one way or another, I think, in the next 6 months, because he has to start from scratch in many ways. Obviously, not every player is going to leave, and obviously he has players already that fit that mold. Amad Diallo, for example, you mentioned Højlund and how he can maybe suffice. I actually think they need to begin with a left back, and they probably need to begin with somebody in the midfield as well. Those are the two most important positions for me for Manchester United, not up front. I think there's other places that he can go there.
There's an interesting thing with Man United, Rob, and obviously you cover them, as do the other ESPN FC writers. Could they potentially use Marcus Rashford as kind of trade bait or maybe collateral to swap? He's been linked with Napoli. Victor Osimhen is someone who I would love to see him in the Premier League. Could Marcus Rashford be used, or some other players at United who may be surplus to requirement, be used as potential swaps for other players?
It's possible, particularly with Rashford. The word from Man United is that they are prepared to be flexible with that. It's not guaranteed that he will leave the club in January. It's also not guaranteed that he will stay. His future is very much up in the air. The one thing that United have kind of said privately about him is that, he's obviously made it quite clear that he would like a new challenge, and so therefore they will listen to offers. They're prepared to listen to both permanent offers and also loan offers. They also haven't ruled out a possible deal with a Premier League club, so that opens the door for maybe a Tottenham or an Arsenal or a Chelsea to come knocking. What they won't do is a kind of a Raheem Sterling style deal to Arsenal, in that Chelsea are still paying 90% of his wages. The whole point of Man United trying to get Rashford off their books is to free up some kind of finance to invest the money elsewhere, because the money isn't there to do the kind of work to the squad that Ruben Amorim wants and needs. And so January will be about doing what they can with very, very minimal funds. Now, if they can raise a little bit through Rashford, whether it's a loan fee or getting part of his wages off the books, it's possible that they would reinvest. I mean, they are in need of a striker because Joshua Zirkzee hasn't worked out. I would suggest, though, that if they're looking at one position, like LME said, they need a left wing back. And if you're looking at left wing backs to kind of help Amorim implement his system, and you're looking for a player who maybe isn't going to cost an awful lot, Ben Chilwell is sat at Chelsea doing absolutely nothing. Now, that probably wouldn't go down particularly well with Man United fans because he is essentially a Chelsea cast-off. But he is a player who has done well in a wing-back role in the past. He's clearly available because he's not playing at Chelsea at all. It wasn't so long ago that Man United were being linked with him when he was at Leicester anyway. So is there a possibility that maybe you could go to Chelsea and say, why don't you take Rashford and we'll maybe take Chilwell and let's make this work for both of us? It's a long shot, but that is the kind of deal that Man United will be looking for this January.
I'm going to stick with you for Man City, and then I'm going to get LME for Chelsea and Spurs needs before we move on to the weekend action. A slightly elongated ESPN FC Live today because of technical issues. I did that. Ederson at Atalanta. I was listening to your podcast this week, Rob, you and the rest of the ESPN FC writers, and you were talking about how do Man City replace kind of Rodri, but the problem you've got is you don't need to replace him because he's gone. You need to replace him until he's back fit again. So how do you sign someone and then kind of replace them with the guy you've signed him to replace? So Ederson at Atalanta was linked. I know Zubimendi's been mentioned, Guimaraes. Neither of those are likely. Does City believe they have a chance of maybe getting Ederson out of Atalanta, who are joint top of Serie A right now?
They are well aware that it's going to be very, very tough. You're right. They've been linked with Guimaraes at Newcastle. Newcastle's valuation so far has put him above what City are willing to pay, so that at the moment is off. Zubimendi is a player they've looked at Real Sociedad. The problem with Zubimendi is that City feel he is an exact copy of Rodri, and so when Rodri comes back, they can't play together, and then you're left with a 25-year-old Zubimendi on a 5 or 6 year contract, sat on the bench every week. They see Ederson at Atalanta as slightly different to Rodri. Obviously, he would fill that number 6 role, really well until Rodri gets back. But there is a chance that you could sort of mold Ederson into someone who could occasionally play with Rodri. But you're right. City are already well aware of how hard it will be to get him out of Atalanta. They are joint top of Serie A. I think they're 13th in the Champions League. So, should qualify for the knockout rounds. It's going to be really, really tough to get Atalanta to negotiate when they're in such a strong position. And then they need Edison to kind of push for that Serie A title in the second half of the season. It's going to be tough for City. The expectation is that City will look to do something, but they are well aware of how tough it's going to be. They've liked Adam Wharton at Crystal Palace, but he's been injured. He's not played a game since the end of October. He would more fit the mold because he's a 20-year-old. You could bring him in on a long-term deal, and you could ease him in gently and maybe have him fill in for Rodri this season. But then when Rodri comes back, they could play together, or Wharton steps out of the team and then comes back. So it's a little bit of a different deal. City privately are urging caution among their fans. This isn't going to be a case that they've just got a bucket load of money to spend and they can bring in whoever they want. Every single club in the Premier League will tell you that the January window is really, really tough. You can't get players out of clubs mid-season. Prices are inflated. It's really, really tough. So while City are looking to do something, it's going to be hard.
Okay, Elimi, you can finish up with Chelsea and with Spurs. Needs positionally and potential signings for them. What you got for us?
Well, you would think that Chelsea, having an army in common, don't need anybody. But actually, when you look at what's going on right now defensively, Enzo Maresca is probably needing some defensive reinforcements. Wesley Fofana and Benoit Badiashile are out for extended periods. So that means that, despite the massive roster, Chelsea needs some strengthening at the back. The young Argentinian Aaron Anselmino was on loan at Boca Juniors. The president of Boca Juniors, the one and only Juan Román Riquelme, said of the young man that he's one day going to play for the Argentinian national team. That's how much he rates him. But he's young, and Enzo Maresca has said, look, he's not going anywhere, but because he's been playing in the Primera División in Argentina, we're going to have to really slow his roll here. So, Chelsea do need some more reinforcements at the back. Rob mentioned Ben Chilwell is on the out. Maresca said that, possibly he can leave in January. So I'm looking to see if Chelsea brings somebody as a center back. Mark Guehi has been a chat reportedly who could return to Chelsea after leaving 3.5 years ago to Crystal Palace. That's a very Chelsea thing to do. So I would imagine if they're going to go for somebody, I'm not saying that they're going to do it, but that's the kind of target that I imagine that Chelsea would want to. In terms of Tottenham, where do you start, man? I know that we're going to do some previews in a minute, but I think they're going to go all out in January. I know that Rob talked about the difficulties of the transfer window in January, and I totally agree. But if there's one team that you're going to be looking at in the Premier League that might be doing a lot, or trying to do at least, is Spurs, and it begins at the back, right? Vicario, for example, his extended injury means that they need a goalkeeper. Okay, Fraser Forster could not be the answer for the entire season. They need somebody. And maybe reportedly Sam Johnston, right, who's a second fiddle to Sa at Wolves, is not getting the minutes. Maybe he could be the answer. Okay, so maybe the market means that they're willing to listen for him. Then you're talking about center back. Again, Coutinho Romero, Mickey Van de Ven, they're all out. They need somebody at the back. Draguzin right now is the only natural center back that's available. You can't have Archie Gray playing there all the time. Fikayo Tomori from AC Milan, he might be an interesting option for Tottenham as well. I liked Yaimar Medina from Independiente del Valle, who's a left back, left wing back, because Destiny Udogie is also out now as well for a long time, right? So there's a lot going on. And here's the last one for Tottenham that might be interesting, Mark Donaldson. Jack Grealish. Could he be an option for them? Because reportedly, obviously, Jack is getting his minutes, but not enough. City need to bring people in, but it doesn't mean just because they're the defending champions and they have so much money, etc., that they're not willing to bring some money in as well. And Jack could be an option there as well. So there's a lot for Tottenham to do, and I expect them, out of most teams in the Premier League, to be super active in January.
Okay. Well, as you've both said, it's not the window for buying clubs. It's definitely a seller's window in January when you can inflate prices and see what you can get. Now, as they would say, and if you're a BBC continuity announcer, slightly later than planned and scheduled on ESPN FC Live, we shall look ahead to the weekend action. There are two games I want to touch upon. We'll get to Spurs against Newcastle in a second. But Liverpool against Manchester United. Many years ago, this was one of the prime games on the calendar. It's still a great game to look forward to, but by the looks of things, it's very one-sided, Rob Dawson. What do you expect at Anfield on Sunday? Do Man United have a chance of upsetting the apple cart like they did in the derby, or are Liverpool just far too strong in all areas of the park?
Well, form would tell you that United have got absolutely no chance, and that the idea at Anfield will be to keep the score down as best they can. You have, though, just referenced the derby from a couple of weeks ago, and this group of Man United players has a pattern of pulling off big results against big sides when you least expect it. Twice against Liverpool at the back end of last season, once in the FA Cup and once in the league. The FA Cup final itself against Man City, no one gave them the hope at Wembley, and they ended up winning 2-1. They did it against City a couple of weeks ago at the Etihad again. I mean, obviously City aren't at their best at the moment, but no one really gave Man United a hope, and they ended up winning 2-1. The Man United fans who were travelling to Anfield are going there with a lot of trepidation and worry, I imagine, because if they play anything like the first 30 minutes against Newcastle, if they do that at Anfield, the game could be out of sight before United even get a touch the ball. But this group of players, as I said, have had a tendency to raise themselves, whether it's a mental thing or a physical thing. They can do it on their odd day. And I was sat in Ruben Amorim's press conference a couple of hours ago, and he said the same thing. He said that over the course of the season, you find out who the best team is. And at the moment, that's Liverpool. But on any given day, you never know. And he still has some very, very good players. So you never know. Again, form would suggest there's absolutely no chance, but you just don't ever know.
Just over a year ago, LME on ESPN FC Live, when the microphones worked for the entirety of the show, we were previewing this fixture, Liverpool against Manchester United, and we were excited, as we always are when Liverpool play Manchester United, because you always think, oh, there's a decent rivalry there. They don't like each other. We might get a feisty encounter. What a dog of a game. It was 0-0, but there was a reason why it was 0-0, because the time before when the sides met, it was 7-0 for Liverpool. So United were like, I'm just going to shut up shop. And that's what they did, and they got themselves a point. So what's more likely on Sunday? A really tight, tense, dull, horrible game for the neutral to finish goalless, or Liverpool not maybe scoring 7, but run away with it?
I think the latter, to be perfectly honest, because even though it was a tight one, like you said, in the last one over a year ago, we have to look about this historically. United haven't won any of their last 8 league away matches. At Liverpool, 4 draws and 4 losses, which is actually their longest run in the Premier League against the opponent. They've only scored 1 goal in their last 8 Premier League matches against them. And by the way, when you look at just what's going on with Manchester United right now, losing the last 4 in all competitions and the last 3 matches in the Premier League, they haven't scored a single goal. Everything tells you, like Rob said at the beginning, that really this is going to be about trying to minimize the damage. I think this is what's going to happen. I think that, and to the point of the derby, I think Amorim's United will come in and they will try very hard to keep it very close. And it could be a thing where in the first 45 minutes, it's a stalemate. But as the match develops and as the game develops, I just think that Liverpool have too much sass, too much knowledge, too much Mohamed Salah for it not to be a good, strong win for the Reds. I see it more as a situation where it's, a multiple scoring afternoon for Liverpool and United suffering, just because also the system that Amorim plays is actually a beautiful, beautiful opening for Liverpool, because they can really just pick out exactly where to find you. 3 at the back against this team, it's just too much. I think the one positive for United is the fact that Manuel Ugarte and Bruno Fernandes are back. Now you're not just relying on Casemiro and Christian Eriksen in the midfield, because if you had that against Alexis McAllister and Ryan Gravenberch, forget about it. So that's a plus. And I think Rob is right. I think that when it comes to these big games, Amorim's United will feel inspired in one way, but Liverpool are just too good right now. I don't think it's going to be 7-0, but I think it'll be like 3-1, 4-1, something like that.
United have got Liverpool on Sunday, and then they've got Arsenal in the Cup the following weekend. Two massive games. I would suggest, though, that the two games after that, Southampton at home and Brighton at home, are far bigger for Man United in their current state. That these two games really are free hits for Man United because no one is expecting anything. But you will find out everything about how Man United's season is going. The second half of the season is going to go when they play Southampton and Brighton.
Yeah.
Unscheduled and unprompted quiz time, very quickly. Fingers on buzzers. January 2016, last time Man United won at Anfield in the Premier League. Who scored the winning goal?
Wayne Rooney.
Did you buzz in?
First of all, he covers the damn club, right? So, like...
I've got a question. Unscheduled. The last Man United player to score a goal at Anfield.
Oh, that's a good one. Give me the decade at least.
It was in December 2018.
God.
Here. Jesse Lingard.
Yes, so there it is.
Cheated. Right in front. Cheated.
Yeah.
Mourinho.
So we're both disqualified.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. There you go. Anyway, quiz time's over. Our final game to look ahead to, as the production team behind the scenes are like, get a move on here. I've got chicken pie in the oven. I've still got another half an hour, and I'm okay.
And you got to go to Best Buy and get a mic.
Exactly. Got to get a new microphone. Finally, Spurs against Newcastle. LME, you've just spoken about Man United's formation maybe playing right into the hands of Liverpool this weekend. Could we see another Liverpool-esque performance against Spurs at in North London at Spurs Stadium from Newcastle, LME? Because their setup just looks like it's perfect to go to somewhere like Spurs and to rip apart a defence that's already got band-aids and plasters on it.
Yeah, I'm very worried about Tottenham in this game. Very worried. Just everything is against them in this one. To your point, number one, Newcastle are absolutely flying. 5 straight wins. Alexander-Arnold, we talk about, by the way, he had 25 Premier League goals in the calendar year of 2024. Only Alan Shearer has done better in that time. Anthony Gordon, by the way, as well, who's been directly involved in a goal each of his last 4 appearances as well. Like Jacob Murphy. I mean, they're just doing so well and flying and finally finding this identity that they once knew, because there was a patch obviously in the middle of this season. And as we mentioned earlier, Tottenham, it's not just about the way that they're losing and the lack of confidence, but it's also about the personnel. I mean, Fraser Foster in goal. They only have one natural center back available right now. Destiny Udogie as well. Rodrigo Bentancur is suspended as well. And you know, this is a big one for them. And this is a one, by the way, where, Thomas Tuchel, the England manager, is going to be taking and watching. And this is the one Premier League game, by the way, where it's never expect a lot of goals, but I expect it in the favor of Newcastle unless Tottenham really work very, very hard to make something happen. And the last thing I'll say about this game, by the way, is that it's time, I think, for Heung-min Son to be on the bench. I think he needs it. He missed a penalty against Wolves. He's got a lack of confidence right now. None of his crosses really met in that game as well. And it's not totally his fault. I think it's also to do with the fact that just collectively, there's a lack of confidence with Tottenham. And if Heung-min Son just sits and kind of rely more on Brennan Johnson, who's, by the way, their leading scorer this season for the club as well, and Kulusevski on one side with Dominic Solanke in the middle, I think, just allow Son to just take a seat back and just reflect on what's going on and maybe come in later in the game if they can keep it close. But on paper, I'm very worried for Tottenham. Newcastle are absolutely flying.
It's always an interesting one, Rob, about players lacking confidence, and is benching them the best bet to do that? So if you can address that LME's just brought up with regards to Son. But before you do that, I know I promised that quiz time was over. Anybody know how many clean sheets Spurs kept at home in Premier League in 2024?
2.
Okay. Over or under 2?
Under.
It was 1. It was against Everton, start of the season. He's flying. But you didn't buzz in, so you're disqualified again. But there you go.
Yes, I win by default.
You've won both quizzes by getting everything wrong. That's quite impressive. That just shows
the Peruvian way, my friend.
Unbelievable. Skullduggery aplenty. Who cares? No diagrams on a scorecard. Bottom line is, Spurs with one clean sheet at home in the league in 2024. They're not going to get that against Newcastle. They're going to have to score 2 or 3 to have a chance of getting something. So look ahead to the game, please, Rob, and Son potentially left out of the firing line and maybe brought on as a sub. What are your thoughts on those two things?
I mean, in terms of the game, I actually think that Tottenham are better off playing away from home at the moment.
Yeah.
I was at the Carabao Cup game that they played against Man United, and they were winning 3-0 and absolutely cruising. And Man United scored, and you could feel the anxiety in the stadium. I was sat in the press box, and you could feel the fans getting agitated. Even when they were winning 3-1, you could feel it, and it drifts onto the pitch, and the players begin to feel it, and it affects the players. As much as you would like to say that a player is completely focused and isn't aware of all this stuff, it's not true. And the atmosphere in the stadium can have a big part in these games. I just think that where Tottenham are at the moment, with the injuries that they've got, the football that they're playing, with the style of football that Postecoglou wants to play, there is a nervousness now around Tottenham, and the minute that they are under any kind of pressure, there is an anxiety that kind of transmits itself, and Newcastle will be well aware of that, because they played into that exact feeling when they played Man United on Monday and took complete advantage of it. So I'm the same as LME. I would be worried for Tottenham, particularly against a Newcastle team who are playing so well. In terms of Son, I would disagree slightly. I think that in these moments that you need your best players on the field. Sonny is one of their, if not their best player, he is probably their most experienced player. He's captain there for a reason. In these really tough moments when you need players to step up, not necessarily in terms of performance, but in terms of game management, when you need someone to stand on the pitch and say, look, lads, just calm down. Let's just get a grip of this for 5 minutes. You need that kind of calming influence. And I think, as he isn't playing well at the moment, and I completely understand where LME is coming from, that maybe it's time to take him out. I just think when you're preparing for this type of fixture, knowing what is happening around Tottenham at the moment, you need these guys to step up. Not physically, but maybe mentally, just to be that calming influence at a time when there's chaos all around. So I would suggest that he still starts, but there's certainly a debate there, because he's not playing particularly well.
Yeah, we had chaos after about 12 minutes of this show. If you've been with us throughout, you'll know exactly what we mean. If you weren't, then you can watch us again on YouTube. But there was a VAR intervention and a 12-minute delay to proceedings. That's why this show is 42 minutes long today instead of 30. My thanks to LME and to Rob Dawson. If you're watching or going to a game this weekend across the continent, enjoy it. I'll be on Marbella against Atletico Madrid from La Rosaleda in the Copa del Rey.
But you're not going to Marbella, Mark Donaldson, are you?
I wish, because I'm also on the Spurs-Newcastle game with the reaction right here on ESPN FC Live after that. And a reminder, we're live after Liverpool against Man United here on Sunday. Have a good weekend, everybody.